Hey there, I'm SourceMake and welcome to part 1 of the Java series where we're going to be setting up our environment to run Java code, and we're going to make a simple Hello World program to make sure that our code compiles and runs on our environment. So as usual, I've got my website open and it's got all the resources that we need, and we already did a part 0 video. So if you're new, go ahead and click the links below this video. If you need to know what to do, it'll have all the information that you need. And if not, then go ahead and keep watching because we're going to get right into this. So we're going to set up our environment for Java, and I'm going to just go ahead and open a terminal in our project folder, and I'm just going to run it really quickly. You can see the first line here because it takes a little bit. So we are setting up our environment to run Java code basically on Ubuntu Linux, Ubuntu 16, and you can use any bash terminal to do this. You could do it on Windows, you could do it on Mac. Just use bash or Google how do I use bash, and then you run these commands. And the reason we're doing this instead of using a build tool is that it's better to learn how the files interact with each other in the most basic setup possible. So you could use a build tool like Maven or Gradle, and we will be using those in later videos, but that doesn't really help you understand how the code works and what actually happens when we are compiling these projects, and that's just not a good way to learn things. You should learn things like the hacker way, like as basic as possible. And this is kind of taking a while. Did it finish or something? I don't understand. It's taking a while to finish, but you can see that to set this up, we are running these two commands. And the first one is sudo apt-get install default JRE. That one finished, so let's type the other one because it's kind of lacking. Sudo apt-get install default JDK. And the first one installs Java runtime environment, I think. The second one installs Java development kit or something like that. To be honest with you, I don't know, but these are the commands you run, and once you do that, you will be able to run Java and Javac, and you'll see how we're going to use those later in the video to compile our code. And you just basically just let this run, and it finished. So we're going to type Java version and cross your fingers. Yes, you see that our Java works because we have OpenJDK version something, blah blah blah, whatever, it doesn't really matter. We have Java working on our computer, and again, this is better than the build tools. If you really want to use the build tools, then go ahead and click below this video for a link to one of the future videos I'm going to do where you learn about Maven and Gradle. But if not, just do it this way. This is much better. So let's have our Hello World file set up, our Hello World project. So we're going to create a file called main_startup.java, and I like to always name my main function in a file called main startup because that just defines how it's going to work. And you can see that the code we need is right here. So we're going to copy this code in and we're going to save it, and I'm going to explain it right now. So first, we have a class named main startup, and this class name is the same as the file name. It has to be that way, so make sure every time you have a file, you need a class inside that has the same name. And don't worry about classes yet, we'll explain that in a while. But we have this function that is called main. And this main function, anytime there's one per project, and this main function defines the order of execution of our code. So when your program is going to be a procedural thing. This line gets executed, this line gets executed, this line gets executed, and it all starts from main. We're going to branch out from main, so always make sure you start from main. So let's go through this line. The first line is public, which means it's accessible from other classes. The second line is static, which means static is a little complicated, to be honest with you. I don't think we should get into much detail, but basically anything that's static belongs to the class and it can be used outside the class without needing to instantiate it, which sounds a little confusing, but we'll talk about it more eventually. Next, we have void, which means there's no return type. You'll learn that there are data types like numbers and truth or false boolean and strings that are like a string of words like this. This type of function returns nothing, so that's just void. Then we've got the name of the function, which is main, lowercase. This is where our projects, our Java programs always start. Then we have a parameter to main, which basically means if we were going to pass something from the command line. So if you wanted to say like Java main, and then you wanted to pass some arguments like 1 or arg2 and stuff like that. From the command line, when you're running the project itself, that's where you would have all those command line arguments would come into this string. Because remember, you're starting from main, and what you're doing is you're saying, okay, I want to give some external input when I start this executable file or when I start the Java project, so I'm going to give it to this string argument. String is just a data type. You can see this is an array of strings, which we'll get into when we go into data types. But here is our bread and butter right now to make sure that our program works. This is going to output a line to the terminal that says hello world from source make. You've got system, and inside of system there is an out class or library, and inside that out class you've got a print line function, and that print line is going to print this string to the console. And you always end every single statement with a semicolon. So that's just basic programming. This is supposed to be an introduction to programming, but just take for granted this syntax right now. And if you're new, you'll just learn how it works later when we do more examples. You'll see how everything builds up. So what we need to do now, we have our main startup for our hello world code, and we need to compile it. So we're going to compile it by saying javac main startup.java. And this, you look at our project folder right now. We've got a main startup.java file, and we've got the README file that I created in the last video for the Git project. And we are going to enter, and what this does is it creates a Java class. So we have some code here, but by itself, it's not a scripting language. You can't do anything with it. What javac does is it kind of compiles our code into an executable that can be run. So we had this code, and by itself it doesn't do anything, but we run it through javac, and javac compiles it into something that can be run, which isn't this executable itself. It's a little weird with Java, but if you were doing like C++ or something, you'd get a .exe file that you could run. So we've got that, but now we want to run the code. Well, to run it, we're going to say Java main startup, and main startup is just the name of these files. They're all named the same thing: class name, file name, and this class name. And we can actually open this up to see what's inside, but you can't display it because, again, we are writing this programming language in something that makes sense to us, but then this is getting translated into some machine code that only machines understand, which becomes an executable for our computers to run. So Java main startup, and we see hello world from source make. So our hello world project is completed. So what we're going to do now is, that's basically it for this video. I don't want to go into like too much because you can look at the code and we got it to work. You need to get this to work on your machine. That's how this works. Do the instructions I said. Get a bash terminal open. If you need instructions to do that in Windows, there'll be links below this video or on this webpage. I'll set those up. And make sure you can run Java, set this main startup file up, and then just compile it and run it. And if you can do that, you're good. So again, I'm going to say this one part, that all this code is going to be on GitHub in separate commits. So I'm going to do a git add right now. I'm going to do a git commit. Actually, let me get rid of... Okay, whatever. We can keep it for now. Video 1. What was this called? Video 1 setup and hello world. And we're going to push these changes. Source make. Oh my gosh, what's my password? Do I even remember it? So after each one of these videos, if you want to see the exact code or the exact state of the project folder, I'm going to be uploading it at the end of the video to Git. So if you go to this page, you can see that these two files are on this page. So all you have to do is you have to go to this commit page and you say video 1. Oh, video 1, this is the one we just did. So go ahead and click browse the repository at this point, and you can see the repository, which is the code. And if you want to download this project right now, at this point in time, just go ahead and click the download button over here. If you want to go to like video 0, then go ahead and click here. And this is going to be like a good tool to know as we continue on these tutorials. So that was the Hello World project. If you can get this project down, then the rest of the videos are just understanding the code, and it'll be super easy. So I'm SourceMake. Thanks for watching. You now know a little bit more about Java. Make sure you try this on your own machine.